is that why do we need a longevity plan?
2 crore that you may have today in your kitty, 25 years down the line, it would just be equivalent to 47 lakhs. There is a study which revealed that loneliness is actually equivalent, the damage done by loneliness is equivalent to about smoking 15 cigarettes, right? How heavy is that, right? We understand the effect of cigarettes on our lungs, but do we know about how loneliness is actually having such a damaging effect on our health, right? So then the importance of social networks becomes equally important. So to any youngster who asks me, I have friends, why more? I think what one needs to evaluate is, where is that social network really centered? Is it just my friends at office? Or is it also just friends who are like, okay, I have school friends or college friends, but they're based out of other cities. I meet them once in a while, or I talk to them once in a while. But the place where I stay, I do not have a very active group of people that I can be with. The lifespan that we've spent in good health vis-a-vis poor and moderate health hasn't changed at all.
The health span has not increased.
No, so the time span of our life that we spend in good health, it's only 50%, and that hasn't shifted in that time frame. So while we are living a longer life, the amount of life we have in good health is still only 50%. 50% of our life we live in poor or moderate health.
Hello and welcome. This is the Longevity Shot. I am Kavita Krishnan, and this is a show where we discuss how to prepare for the 100-year life. And in fact, I can't think of anyone better to talk about making a longevity plan than our guest today. I'm joined by Nidhi Chawla. She is the CEO and the founder of Silver Talkies. Now, Silver Talkies is a pioneer in the elder care space in India. Nidhi is also the author of a book which came out in October 2022 called Rethink Ageing. And in fact, Nidhi, that is where I would like to start this conversation also. What do you mean by Rethink Ageing? Because I think that is also what you're trying to do with Silver Talkies, right?
Yeah, thank you, Kavita. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure to, interact with you. So thank you so much for that. Well, the idea of Rethink Aging, I think, it's a very simple thing that, when you think about aging, or at least, for example, when we started Silver Talkies, I and Reshmi in 2014, we had a lot of assumptions and preconceptions about aging as such, right? We assume that aging, when our parents retire, they would have a certain kind of lifestyle, which is not so active anymore. They would kind of hang up their boots, they would sit at home, take care of grandchildren, maybe, travel with family, do things with family. But typically, we do not see them enjoying life by themselves. At least that was the definition of aging that we have seen with our parents growing up, right? However, when we started interacting with older adults through Silver Talkies, we saw there was a lot of zest of life, and they all wanted to do new things. They all wanted to explore new horizons, So it just required some enabling and empowerment to, kind of make that happen for them. They all want to stay independent. They all want to stay updated. They all want to feel relevant, even if they are older, right? And I think Silver Talkies and the book Rethink Aging were, kind of, that's the whole mission. How do you kind of help older adults lead a better life, and how do you help them age better?
So essentially what you're telling us is that we have this trope in media. If you see, whenever you talk about seniors, you have these stock images of people in a park reading a newspaper, somebody walking a dog, people going on a walk, old women sitting and talking together. That is not what aging is currently.
It's not at all. So very funny example, when I and Reshmi were traveling with the book to different literature festivals, everywhere we went, we used to ask this one common question to the audience, that when you think aging, what is the visual image that comes to your mind? And it was very interesting to observe that all the youngsters in the crowd would say things like hospitals, wheelchair, walking sticks, so something along those lines. However, the older adults in the crowd would shout and say freedom, travel, friends, enjoyment. So there was such a stark difference between what the youngsters visualize aging to be versus who are living it. right? So that's the whole thing, that stereotype that we have this whole box definition of aging. That's actually not how it is.
I'm really going to ask you to dig deep into your experience of over a decade building Silver Talkies, interacting with so many seniors, and sort of lay out a roadmap for us if we were to plan in our 40s for longevity. Sort of set up a longevity plan. So, what are the things that we need to be thinking about? So, I mean, of course. First off, one question that I keep getting asked by everybody, and I would hope that you can answer that, is that why do we need a longevity plan?
Okay, that's an important question to ask, but I think answer is actually very simple. And if you observe things around ourselves and how, like, I remember when I was growing up, our lifestyle was so much different, right? We were okay with having limited resources. We grew up with that mindset that less is all right, right? But over time, our lifestyles have changed. Our disposable incomes have increased. We've gotten used to leading a certain kind of lifestyle, which is kind of in a lot of ways luxurious. We do enjoy our cup of coffee at a Starbucks, and we do enjoy going to both domestic and international destinations. We do enjoy hanging out with friends, right? We do like going to movies, which our parents would not do so much of, right? Those were more like luxuries for them. Going out for a movie was a luxury for them. Vis-a-vis going out for a movie today is a given. Having a OTT is a given, unlike having a Doordarshan in those times, right? So I think the most critical factor is, while we are living longer lives, our lifestyle definitely has changed, which requires a certain kind of maintenance. Hence, you need a longevity plan or a retirement plan, as people usually call it. Secondly, while our healthcare has tremendously improved, which is also contributing to the life that we are living longer now, our healthcare costs have also gone up. And so have the kind of ailments that we are having today, right? And things which are recognizable now, like, things like the comorbidities are on a rise, your cancer is on a rise. There are so many things which are happening now, which the treatment costs are super expensive. How would you fend for that? And to add on that, health insurance is still not something which is easily available and is accessible by all, right? You do not have enough savings to take care of those costs. You do not have a backup plan to take care of those costs. So unless you start planning for it today, and to add to top on it, the inflation cost, in fact, say a 2 crore that you may have today in your kitty, 25 years down the line, it would just be equivalent to 47 lakhs, right? If you take into account the 6% inflation rate, right? So I think by going by all those things which are happening around us, it does become, important that we do have a plan in place which allows us to lead a life whereby, if we retire at the current prescribed retirement age, at least the public sector that it has, about 60 years, right? You have a lot of life ahead of you where you would not have a productive financial income coming in. So how would you maintain your lifestyle then? Right? A lot of people want to travel. They keep putting it off, thinking, okay, right now I'm busy, I'll do it later. But then again, you need access to resources. You need the plan in place for that. And especially also given the fact that women are expected to live a longer life, it becomes all the more pertinent for women to have a longer term plan in place.
Right. And you also mentioned insurance, and currently our insurance doesn't cover most insurance plans would, I guess, run out at 80, 85.
Yeah, so I think the way I remember stats, Lassie report said that only 18% of older adults have a health insurance plan currently, right? And their OPD expenses are very high, and most of the health insurance plans do not cover OPD expenses. Only now, recently, that we have been seeing a lot of new policies coming around, which are, kind of redefining or reimagining the whole concept or the coverage of insurance in many ways, which is a welcome move. But then it will take some time for that to find acceptance, and especially with age, since the premiums really rise, making it unaffordable. That's another critical factor which, kind of keeps people away from something like a health insurance.
When you're drawing up your longevity plan, is finance the only thing that you should be considering?
No, not at all.
So of course,
I actually would recommend or suggest something which I very strongly feel about, and something which also forms the foundation of the Silver Talkies work. There's actually something called an active aging framework, right? And it looks, in a in a normal man's parlance, it would probably like what you call as a holistic wellness plan, right? Where you are looking at all aspects of one's life, which includes your physical health, your intellectual health, your social and emotional well-being, your vocational, which covers your financial well-being as well. And then there are two other elements of spiritual well-being and environmental well-being, right? So I think there are different elements or different pillars to lead a good life and to age well. And I think once you have a plan to cater to all these seven dimensions, I think then you are in good stead to, lead your retired life.
now, one thing that keeps coming up in all the conversations I have with people like you and with other longevity experts is that you need to really look at preventive healthcare. So, what is preventive healthcare? Is it just doing that annual healthcare checkup and ensuring that your vitals are in place?
Uh, I actually don't agree with that definition at all. Though typically we refer to preventive healthcare as, yeah, okay, getting your preventive health checkup done every year to figure out how your physical health is, proceeding, and to detect for any early signs of cancer or any other ailments that may be on the horizon, kind of a thing. While that definitely is a must-have and we should do, as they say, prevention is better than cure. But I feel preventive health actually is a much broader term that we need to understand, right? Because health is not just about physical health, right? Health has elements of mental health as well, intellectual health. And I think we completely discount or completely do not understand the importance of social and emotional health, right? So issues like loneliness or depression, which creep in, are largely from, at least for older adults, they largely uh, stem from the fact that they do not have enough social network to kind of engage with, right? Which leads to that loneliness and isolation issues. They do not have they do not have things to keep them productively engaged, because once they retire, it's almost like they are just caught in a small arena, which really is very constricting, right? When they were working, they were used to being at a workplace, they had friends there, but once retired, all of those things kind of, slowly and gradually fizzle off, right? So to me, preventive healthcare is supposed to be understand and should be understood as a much broader term, where you are looking at especially these 4 or 5 different aspects of your health, right? So it becomes very important to look at each and everything, like mentally and intellectually. Now we know that dementia or Alzheimer's is on a rise. A lot of people are already having it and are expected to have it. So how do you kind of take care of your cognitive health, right? That also becomes equally important, and that is a big part of your preventive health, right? How do you keep your brain active? How do you exercise your brain on an ongoing basis? Again, social networks, there is a study which revealed that loneliness is actually equivalent, the damage done by loneliness is equivalent to about 15 cigarettes, right? How heavy is that, right? We understand the effect of cigarettes on our lungs, but do we know about how loneliness is actually having such a damaging effect on our health, right? So then the importance of social networks becomes equally important. WHO said depression is almost like an epidemic now, right? Again, your mental health and your social and emotional well-being becomes very, very critical. So I think looking at all of these aspects should be a part of preventive health.
So let's talk about cognitive health first. And you mentioned about dementia and how you should be exercising your brain. So when you are working on this longevity plan, like I said, uh, what do you need to do?
I will not get into the medical intricacies of it because I'm not I'm not a qualified person for that. But to me, as a person, I just feel cognitive health can be about multiple things, right? It can be about having hobbies. It can be about how actively are you contributing to the society or otherwise, right? Are you kind of still active in a space which kind of inspires you, gives you a sense of purpose, right? I think it's a mixture of all of that, right? If I am active, if I'm not just sitting idle and watching TV all day, right? Or I'm not just reading newspaper, but I am doing something with that knowledge, which applies that knowledge and expertise that I have, then of course, my cognitive health is going to be in a better shape, right? So it's a mix of everything. How well am I contributing, how well I'm staying connected, how well I am continuing to learn as well. I think lifelong learning is again one important aspect of growing older and aging better, where you continue to keep your, like, learning a new language is supposed to be so good for your brain health, right? Because you are actually exercising those cells. So, for example, on our platform, we run these bhajan classes. To anybody outside, it may seem, what's so challenging and what's so great about bhajan classes. Again, you're getting into spirituality and you're kind of classifying older adults in a certain box again. But the beauty of those bhajan classes is that the group is learning bhajans in different languages. They have learned bhajans, I think, if I remember the count correctly, about in 9, 10 different languages, right? So if I'm a Hindi speaker or if I'm a Tamil speaker, but I am learning bhajans in Bengali, in Punjabi, in Marathi, there is so much of brain activity that I'm doing. And, in my bhajan class, we have a 96-year-old. She's the oldest member of our club, right? So imagine a 96-year-old learning a new bhajan every day, which she knows she would like to sing in the class only, and they all learn it, right? And they sing it. So the whole learning process itself, to memorize a new bhajan every week and to deliver it and to, and to feel good about it, to be encouraged by your peer group in that class, that does, I think that contributes heavily into their well-being. So there are different things one can do for the cognitive health aspect as well.
So one of the key things that you need to do is you ensure that you're learning something new and you're actually putting to use what you already know. So that could be by figuring out some sort of a second career option, as
Yes,
they
it could
say,
be
right?
volunteering. It could be, like, for example, I really feel, in fact, I think I spoke to you about it, where I felt that, the whole AA model could be used, even where, when we have so many school dropouts, right? Could we really assign mentors to them who are all these senior people, right? Could they have sponsors? Could they have these people that they are attached to, who are their mentors, who are their coaches, who kind of help them lead a better life, right? So imagine having that life purpose, that I am working with the, say a 16-year-old or a 18-year-old and helping them stay on track with regards to their education and thereon. So I think, yeah, it's like that contribution itself, whether it comes through volunteering or it through comes like a gig opportunity, or it comes through a consulting assignment, or it comes through a part-time or a full-time work opportunity. Every opportunity is great, right?
And that kind of also brings us to social well-being that you spoke about, and the entire concept of the entire issue of loneliness per se. Now, if you were to speak to any 30 or 40-year-old and tell them that you need to go out and make new friends, the typical answer that you would get is, I have an active social life, I have people, I know I have friends. Why do I need to, make friends, do that extra effort?
See, I think I will quote, here I will quote the Harvard's happiness study that they have done, over decades. It's been done over 85 years plus. And, they were studying about who are the happiest people, right? And they said happiest people are actually those who have very good social networks, who have friends, right? That's the importance of social networks. Your happiness is actually linked to the friends that you have, to the kind of social circle that you have, right? Now, the mistake that most often that we do, and this is what that study also says, right? Why it becomes more challenging in older age is because when we are younger, and since we are working, most of our social network is limited or defined by our workspace, right? I would be hanging out with my colleagues, I would be hanging out with my employees or whoever that is, my teammates, right? But once the workspace is out of picture and I am not there anymore, do I have another social circle to fall back on? Do I have people with like-minded interests? Do I have people to go out, say for a pottery class or to go to theater? So I think social network also becomes very important, that you may have a professional network where you have friends, you hang out, you do things with them. But finding a network beyond that, which is not restricted to your workspace, is becomes very important, because that's the one which would last you longer. Because those interest based network that you would pick up, like a lot of people nowadays go biking, right? To know that I am going to be out on Sunday on a biking trip gives such a high, right? Because I am breaking away from my regular day to day routine life there, right? So I think finding social networks beyond workspace become very important. So if you're doing that, then I think you're doing very well, right? So to any youngster who asks me, I have friends, why more? I think I think what one needs to evaluate is, where is that social network really centered? Is it just my friends at office? Or is it also just friends who are like, okay, I have school friends or college friends, but they're based out of other cities. I meet them once in a while, or I talk to them once in a while. But the place where I stay, I do not have a very active group of people that I can be with.
Right. And you also, I recall, speaking to you earlier, and in one of our interactions, you also said it's very important not just to have friends, but also to have that intergenerational contact. So even as you grow older, you need to ensure that you are also spending time with people who are much, much younger than you.
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
I think simple thing. I think it makes you feel younger, right? It makes you feel relevant. It makes you feel still included, right? And I think that's the most important feeling, or knowledge that older adults are looking for. That I don't want to be excluded. I don't want to feel isolated. I want to still feel that connection across ages, right? I may have friends in my age group, but I still want to be want to be able to have a good conversation with my grandchildren, or people in the younger generation, right? I think that's, to my if I were to think of it from their point of view, I think it gives them a high to be able to have a knowledgeable conversation with the youngster, and to youngster to have a knowledgeable conversation with them. It's like, two people meeting at an equal footing. And that's such a huge accomplishment to have, where even the youngster also, why learns from an educated person and a wiser person. Then also, where what we were talking about earlier, when people have this whole idea of, youngsters have an idea of old age, it helps kind of break that idea as well. It helps shift that idea, right? So I think intergenerational connections become really important, because again, similar, I would give the Samvad example again, because our annual event is actually an intergenerational event where we collaborate with educational institutes. The students are the ones who actually perform alongside our members. So when I said that classical dance performance, it actually on stage had our members and also young students of those dance schools. So the youngest person on the stage was, I think, 7 years old, while the oldest, as I said, was 78, right? 7 decades apart.
One of the things that our generation will have to contend with is probably the fact that we are the first ones who will be looking at, old age all alone. We are probably the first who will not be able to depend on our children.
Children.
So how do you really plan for that?
I think a lot of seniors still wish that they could age within their own homes. They are not uprooted from where they have been living their life, right? And that's understandable, right? I love my house. I have so many memories in it. I am comfortable here. I know my surroundings. I know where my bhaji wala is. I know where I have to go get milk from. I have everything settled around this space. So it's very difficult for them to imagine to kind of really transfer themselves into another new space and start life afresh, having to make new friends and all, right? But I think, so while there are different ways in which they can adapt their homes to the growing age, because definitely there are certain changes which are happening for which they need to adapt their homes, like, fall prevention needs to be taken care of. They need to make sure that their balance is not really downgrading, and if it is, then what kind of measures they need to take to kind of make sure that they are taken care of in case it happens, right? So I think there is a concept of aging in place which says that you can really refurbish, or you can replan your house in such a way, or modify your house in such a way that it becomes more convenient and suitable for your age. That's possible, right? But I think a lot of people have started considering senior living communities more for comfort and convenience, and also for the safety and security aspect of it, right? Because what a senior living community promises to them is medical care, right? I have a nurse available to me at the press of a button, right? Uh, Whatever it may be, I will be having my vitals checked regularly. Most senior living communities are planned in such a way that they're not very far away from a hospital, right? And there would be somebody to take me there. So even if I'm alone in the house that I stay, somebody knows, is keeping an eye out for me, right? So I think that sense of security and safety becomes important. Then, I am done cooking, or I'm done chasing housekeeping, I'm done chasing my cook. I move to a community, I have everything provided for. But yes, I have to pay for it, right? So I think the challenge which becomes for a senior living community decision becomes about finances, right? So even if I have made up my mind, I am ready to make that move. Sometimes it's about finances. How do I kind of make that transition? Yeah,
Uh,
it's tough. At that age,
yes.
nobody will give you a loan. Reverse mortgages are still not very popular in India. But yeah, if I am somebody who am in my 40s or in early 50s, I can always invest in a house in a senior living community now, and move when I feel ready for it.
And even what you spoke about aging in place and, sort of renovating or refurbishing, age proofing your home in a way.
Hmm.
If you were to do that, you can start doing that in your 40s, I believe, because for 50s at least, because you would have some sort of income to, uh,
Yeah, at least I think
pay
the
for those
basic
repairs.
things like making your floors anti-skid and stuff like that, you may not want grab bars to be in your house right away because you don't need them. And you may not like the idea of having grab bars in your bathroom, making you feel older. But definitely, kind of ensuring that your floors are anti-skid, and you're cutting down that risk. So there are certain changes definitely that one can make over time.
I recall when I was researching this particular article, one of the things that came up was the fact that there's a lot of money that is left unclaimed in mutual funds, in bank deposits across across the country, and that is a big problem even for organizations like the RBI, and that's because the next of kin do not know that it even exists.
Mm.
So how do we in our 40s and 50s start really planning for these things?
Yeah, I think there's a mindset which I generally think prevails in our society, right? We guard our assets very carefully. We don't talk about them. We don't, we build on them, but we don't actively talk about them to our children. At least that's how it was till now, right? Um, and actually, we are accumulating it for them, but we do not actively talk to them about it, right? Because we want to accumulate all those assets and then hand it over to our children. But if we haven't planned for our estate properly, if we have not written a will, if we have not kind of laid down what is it that we want to be done with our money, then of course our children don't know about it, and you have left it interstate with nobody to claim. That becomes a challenge for sure, right? So I think planning ahead, one, I think opening up about your finances and your assets. I think we need to, we need to start having conversations around debt. We need to start having conversations around money, right? In many cases, I don't know if you've come across this, that many a times, at least the women of the earlier generation, they had no idea where the money was because it was always the responsibility of the spouse, right? There are many women who, after their, and as we said, women tend to live longer than the men. Once the husband has passed away, the wife has no idea where the money is saved, where to access the bank locker. They have no clue. I saw that in my own family, right? So I think having those conversations becomes very important. There should be certain transparency. There should be certain, discussions around it so that everybody knows what is where. And I think writing a will makes it the best way to do it, because then you have taken care of where you actually can lay down your desire and guidelines that, okay, I have a house, who has the right to it after I pass, right? I have financial assets in these mutual funds or in these bank accounts. You don't need to specify the amounts because they keep shifting. But as long as you have written what mutual funds you have, what bank accounts you have, which branch, and everything else, right? It becomes much easier for your heirs to really, be able to utilize what you have worked all your life for. Right. So I think it is very, and I think that is something which can be done at any age. It's not something which we really need to wait, till we are older. As they say, the only thing that is certain is death. It can come at any time. Right.
True.
So it's better to be prepared. Earliest is, earlier than later.
The other thing that you spoke about when we had that conversation was the importance for end of life planning, as you called it, and how that is something we don't do in India. So, what is end of life planning, and when should we start doing that?
See, end of life planning, to my understanding, has two aspects to it, right? One is the whole will writing process, where I'm already preparing for my death and I'm figuring out what is to be done after my death, right? With my assets and with the various things, right? Or how do I provide for my family and for my kith and kin, whoever that is, right? So that's also part of end of life planning, which is the estate planning part of it. The other part is where, what we call as the advanced medical directive, which basically is all about that while I'm alive, if I have a medical situation which I cannot recover from, say it could be a terminal illness, I could go into a vegetative state, I could go into coma, whatever that, extreme situation may be, I am already setting, kind of stating in my, this, what they sometimes call it as living will, but in that advanced medical directive, I am laying down instructions whereby I'm saying that in this kind of an eventuality, if it happens, say for example, do not put me on life support, I don't want to be on ventilator, right? So which kind of, eases the burden on your caregiver, who is not now, burdened with the idea of having to take those tough decisions, which can be emotionally very challenging and also very financially draining, right? So end of life planning also has that aspect of, at that stage of life, when I'm still alive, how would I like my life to be taken care of if I'm faced with that kind of an extreme situation. So, but of course, AMDs have a very strict legal and medical framework around it. You need to, there are certain guidelines for it, which are very legally difficult to remember. I don't remember all of it, but then there is, there has to be a
You
medical
need to
board,
have a conversation with a lawyer for that.
lawyer as well. And then you also, even for that AMD to be executed and to be put into effect, it needs a sign off by two, medical boards, a primary board and then a secondary board. So it's, there is a process to it, just to make sure that so that it's not misused.
Yeah, but you can at least put it down in black and white somewhere.
Oh, yes, you can.
That's what you can do. But the key question, when do you start doing all of this?
I think the most common mistake that we tend to make, at least I'm talking from personal experience, right? I think when we are younger, in our 20s, in our 30s, we are still enjoying life in certain ways, right? Life for us is about having fun. More often than not, we tend to ignore our health because we are busy having fun. That joy that we get from going out, drinking, a lot of things. Like for me also, the idea of physical health came to me much, much later. I wish I had known earlier, right? I wish as a child, I was active in more ways than I was, right? So I think even now, with children, and there are so many so many news that we hear, so many reports that we read which talk about obesity becoming an issue, or our children not really having physical activity. At least that generation of seniors had a lot of physical activity because they did not have devices to distract them. They were always out and about, but that's not the case anymore, right? So I think it becomes all the more critical with the this generation than the previous generation. Like the kind of the kind of sitting down on the floor that they used to do, and the kind of lavatories they had a lot of exercise, right? And if you were to look at all the blue zones across the world, that's the most common thing that they have, the kind of physical activity that they have been keeping up, the kind of uh, diet that they have been having. Those are two critical components to really help them live a healthy and a long life, right? So unless we build those into our routine, while yes, there are possibilities to kind of inculcate or imbibe that lifestyle even later. There is nobody saying that if you've not done it in your 30s, you will not be able to do it in your 40s or 50s. You can pick it up anytime, but then the journey is going to be much easier, right? In fact, there was a McKinsey Health Institute study which had this stat which said that while life expectancy has increased by 19 years in since 19 between 1960 and 2019, okay, while it has increased by 19 years, the lifespan that we've spent in good health vis-a-vis poor and moderate health hasn't changed at all.
The
It's still
health span has not
50-50.
increased.
No, so the time span of our life that we spend in good health, it's only 50%, and that hasn't shifted in that time frame. So while we are living a longer life, the amount of life we have in good health is still only 50%. 50% of our life we live in poor or moderate health.
And like you said, for that we need to start working as soon as possible. Like probably yesterday was when we should have started working, but we can still continue doing that. Thanks for really outlining those best practices, which will help us, plan our longevity journey, however different it may be. So thank you very much for that. And thank you all. And I do hope you keep tuning into the Longevity Short, where we'll have more such interesting conversations as we go about trying to understand how to prepare for the 100-year life. Thank you very much.